How do you feel about the Somali fraud in Minneapolis?
I'll be honest, I haven't researched it a lot, but from what it looks like to me is it looks like it's a made-up concept from people trying to smear Governor Walz.
I checked into that a little bit, right? There's nothing going on there. There's like this edgelord going around stirring up his mega conservative base, but none of this stuff is rooted in truth and reality. And I think if you just go out, do your own research, like actually do that, like go out and just like look at video evidence, come to a realistic opinion about what's going on in the world. It's a scapegoat, right, for anti-Somali immigration hate.
I don't know much about the Somali fraud. Sounds like bullshit.
So there's a question as to whether it is a fraud. I don't know. I'm not following that real closely. So I will reserve judgment on that.
I mean, I think that they were just using this as an excuse to go in there and scare people and show that they can be really powerful. I don't think it's authentic at all.
They really don't know about fraud in Minnesota? Really? Really? At this point, I'm convinced liberals are the single biggest threat to this country. Not because they're evil geniuses, but because they're willfully blind. They are the useful idiots. They are. These are the hippies of this era. Vibes over facts, feelings over evidence. And here's the crazy part. You could hit him dead in the face with the receipts and they still wouldn't believe it. Not because the evidence isn't there, but because believing it would shatter their worldview. What's being uncovered right now? None of this is new. This isn't new. This fraud was investigated and exposed back in 2015. We're going to get into that here in a second, but nothing happened. No accountability, no consequences, just silence, excuses, and cover-ups. So don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking that this is some brand new revelation. No, it's not. It's a long-running scandal that was ignored on purpose. And now the bill is finally coming due. And trust me, we've got so much more to get into. Hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Let's go.
It's the morning of March 15th. We're chasing a tip about a man who's leaving the country. Our sources tell us he just took a carry-on bag through security that was packed with $1 million cash. You can do that as long as you fill out one of these government forms. We're told these cloak and dagger-like scenarios now happen almost weekly at MSP International. The money is usually headed to the Middle East, Dubai, and points beyond. Our sources say last year alone, more than $100 million cash left MSP in carry-on luggage.
What we were interested in is where it was going.
The national go-to expert on what's behind these mysterious money transfers is Glenn Kearns. He's a former Seattle police detective who spent 15 years on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force until his retirement.
It's an outright crime. It's unbelievable.
Kearns tracked millions of dollars in cash that was leaving on flights from Seattle. It was coming from hawalas, businesses used to courier money to countries that have no official banking system. Some immigrant communities rely on hawalas to send funds to help impoverished relatives back home. Kearns discovered some of the money was being funneled to a hawala in a region of Somalia that's controlled by the Al-Shabaab terrorist group. How could they possibly come up with such big bucks to transfer back home?
We had sources that told us it's all about it's welfare fraud. It's all about the daycare.
To better understand the connection between daycare fraud and the surge in carry-on cash, you have to look at the history of this crime.
5 years ago, the Fox 9 investigators were first to report that daycare fraud was on the rise here in Minnesota. We exposed how some businesses were gaming the system to steal millions in government subsidies meant to help low-income families with their child care expenses.
This is a great way to make some money. I think it's kind of that informal word of mouth.
In order for the scheme to work, the daycare centers need to sign up low-income families that qualify for child care assistance funding. These surveillance videos are from a case prosecuted by Hennepin County. They show parents checking their kids into a center only to leave with them a few minutes later. Sometimes no children would show up. But either way, the center would bill the state for a full day of child care.
Yeah, they've been at this for a very long time. But the fraud and the scheme, it's even deeper than this. I need you guys to listen to the whistleblower that Nick Shirley, had with him when he was up here exposing this. a couple of weeks back.
When a Somali goes to the doctor, magically, they forgot how to speak English, so they need an interpreter there. So the county brings in an interpreter at $100 an hour, minimum 8 hours, to interpret what the doctor is telling the patient.
So that's another layer of fraud that nobody's even talked about or revealed.
And it's millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars all on its own. Interpreter services.
Yeah, because what percentage do you think of these people, especially if they were born here in the United States, they speak English, right? Like
of course they do.
They should not be saying no English.
And then remember, the interpreter has to get to the doctor's office or the hospital. How are they getting there? The transportation company, and then they got to get back home. And that patient had to get to the doctor's office. How? Transportation. Kids got to get to school. How? Transportation. That's why I said the transportation is the hub of, really, I think, all of this.
So basically what we're talking about between all these fraudulent businesses, the daycare, the autism centers, the adult daycare, the home services, and then the transportation, and then on top of that you have it looped in with them going eventually to the doctors for translators to be paid by the state.
That's exactly what's happening, yes.
Yeah, this is crazy, man. These people, they know the game, they spread the information, and they have been pillaging the state of Minnesota and the federal government for years, in every shape, way, form, of fashion. However they can get over, they're doing it. It's crazy.
Treasury Secretary Bessent called Minnesota ground zero for what may be the most egregious welfare scam in our nation's history to date. 85 of the 98 people who were charged by the Justice Department with this welfare scheme are Somali. And you know this, the Treasury Secretary is probing whether any of the money was somehow funneled outside the country. He actually issued new standards. He's going to make it make someone disclose if they receive public assistance when they try to wire money out of the country, and he's lowered the bar for suspicious activity. What is the practical impact of doing that in the community?
It's just creating fear. What they are doing is creating confusion, chaos, trying to intimidate people from being able to exercise their regular, normal activities that they would. There is no justification in any of the things that they say. The 87 people that you've described as being investigated, many of them adjudicated, all happened under the Biden administration. There is no justification for this search. We know that ICE has the ability to conduct raids. There is no reason to have over 2,000 people coming in to our city and creating the level of terror that they have created.
Well, the administration argues that they have to do it because the state failed to, right?
The federal government and the state have been working peacefully together and have brought justice to these 87 people that you've described. None of this search that they have conducted has produced any sort of criminal activity. They haven't been able to charge anyone as of yet.
Yeah, as of yet. The investigation is ongoing. It's coming. It's coming. More to come. More people will be arrested, hopefully on the federal level, not the state level, so they can't give them these slaps on the wrist that they've been giving a lot of these people.
Well, now investigators are tracking the web of fraud to other Minnesota Democrats, such as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Many of the suspects linked to the scheme live in her district, including a restaurant owner who hosted events for her. He has since been convicted of stealing $12 million in COVID funds.
Yeah, Ilhan Omar's on the hot seat, and she knows it, and they're doing everything that they can to deflect. And, obviously they want to, scream and depict and cry racism. But nah, y'all are basically living up to the billing of who you guys are. Out there in Somalia, they're known as the pirates. Over here in America, they're known as the pirates. Hey, but there's more.
So this daycare was once called Creative Minds Daycare. It was shut down on October 1st, 2025 due to multiple licensing violations like inadequate supervision, safety hazards, and record-keeping failures. It reopened the very next day on October 2nd, 2025 under a new name. They rebranded Super Kids Daycare. And Super Kids Daycare received $2.45 million in payments through Minnesota's Child Care Assistance program. Who owns Super Kids Daycare and the previous, what was it called? Creative Minds Daycare? His name's Mohammed Muse, and he is the brother-in-law of Omar Fateh. For those who don't know, Omar is a member of the Minnesota Senate, and his brother-in-law was convicted in May 2020. The owner of these daycares was convicted for one count of perjury for lying to a federal grand jury about his role in handling and delivering absentee ballots during the August 2020 primary election in Minneapolis. So he admitted to collecting ballots from voters, but he falsely denied under oath that he had paid or coerced anyone, which he did. Do you see how it's all connected? The politicians are in bed with these fraudsters. Mohammed Muse, the brother-in-law, the owner of the daycares, was sentenced to 6 months of house arrest and 2 years of probation. This conviction stemmed from a broader federal probe into potential ballot harvesting in Minnesota's Somali community. Anyway, why are we letting someone like that open daycares? Like back to back.
Yeah. Why is that the case? Why is that the case?
Covered the other day, and one of our spending bills making its way through Congress was a $1 million earmark from Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, which was an earmark that was supposedly going to a substance abuse clinic, which actually happened to be.
I told you, they're in everything. Everything that the government will give money for, these people are involved in it up there in Minnesota. I would assume they're involved in it in other places around the country.
Housed in a restaurant and run by 3 individuals that share the same residential address, according to their IRS paperwork. Tons of red flags. So this is what we saw with the fraud involving the daycare centers. Now we see other earmarks coming directly from members of Congress where it seems fraud is being perpetrated as well. So I raised the issue, and fortunately, the House has now stripped that earmark out of that spending bill. But again, this is how easy money has been flowing to bad actors in Minnesota.
This earmark stuff, it has to go away. When Congress puts together these spending bills, all these earmarks and all this, extra stuff, this extra fluff that they add to these bills, it's got to come to a stop. This is ridiculous. This lady earmarked $1 million to be given to Minnesota, quote unquote, substance abuse groups, to people that she know in her district, which I would assume, and these are just, allegations, I would allege that they're going to turn around and receive that money, keep a little bit of it, and they're going to kick that money right back into her campaign coffers. These people stay in office because they can raise money. Tim Walz became a vice president nominee because he raised $35 million in a single day. Not because he was the best candidate or he was somebody that would be great for the country. Nah, he raised $35 million in a single day, and they said, you know what? He's the guy. They didn't care anything about the past. They didn't care about how he got it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What we have uncovered, though, over the past year is that the Democrat Party especially, and we can say a lot of folks in Congress, but especially the Democrat Party, they are in the business of defrauding the American taxpayers. We're seeing it. We're getting a chance to see it. It's right here in our faces. And that's what's funny about the people who opened this video was talking about, not familiar, never heard of it. Everybody in the world has heard of what's going on in Minnesota. But these people act like they don't. It's ridiculous.
I'm so exhausted in trying to ask what any of this, information has led to you finding any criminals that you have indicted that explains why you are wasting so much of our taxpayer resources and also terrorizing our communities in the amount of federal law enforcement agents that you have in the streets of our city and our state.
None of those people look like they believe a word she is saying, but because they're on the left, this is from MS Now, they're not going to push back. They're not. They're not going to push back. They're not going to jump down her throat. They're just not. They're going to let her spew these lies. They're just going to let her do it. And that's why nobody's watching these people. That's why nobody pays attention to what's going on with corporate media, because these people are nothing more than just bought and paid for propagandists from the DNC. Simple as that.
We're going to turn our attention back to the Somali fraud investigation. As we've discussed before, authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises. What does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Great to be on with you, too. What a crazy time we're seeing here, aren't we?
Absolutely insanity. And I know oversight in the House is looking into these fraud allegations, but I wonder if it's even bigger than we have uncovered thus far. The $700 million in cash going out of the airports there. I have a feeling we are still just scratching the surface.
Yeah, it looks really bad, and obviously very alarming to see that this U.S. cash has been legally going through our airports. And of course, there is a requirement of reporting if you're going to carry more than $10,000. There's a reporting requirement, but I think a really interesting part about this is if, isn't it going to be a little suspicious when you start seeing 10,000, 100,000, millions, and now, more, as John reported earlier, more money that goes through JFK, goes through the Minneapolis airport. Something's wrong there. And I think something that's very interesting that we impose on banks is that banks are required under banking law to require and file and keep track of what they call suspicious activity reports. This is something I think we need to do now when we see the large amounts of U.S. cash, and it's always U.S. cash. I mean, you're not going to see, Chinese yen or anything else going through there. And U.S. cash is king, and we need to certainly have this type of cash exchange reported. It's interesting because you see all this illegal immigration we've had over this time. And by the way, most of those Somalis that are in Minnesota probably came through a refugee program, and probably many of them are already legal American citizens. So suspicious activity reports, some kind of accounting for cash, I think would really be helpful. I'm looking at ways that we might be able to do this so that we could actually look at what's going on. Banks are required to do that. Individuals are not. But I'll tell you, if I'm a TSA agent or anyone else and I see this kind of cash going through, and that you're able to report the amount of cash going through, that it's happening in plain sight. We're seeing corruption in plain sight. Most of the remittances that go back often go to these foreign countries, and there's substantial portions of their economy, whether it's Guatemala and Mexico and other countries. Their own workers are sending that money back. But this is at a level that is just unprecedented.
It is. 2024, $3.75 billion was sent back to Somalia. That's a lot of bread, man. A lot of bread. And then we find out that, they don't really have banks in Somalia, so the way they're getting the money is cash. Hundreds of millions of dollars in cash in suitcases being flown out the country, and no one's doing anything about it. No one's saying anything about it. Everybody's just acting like, hey, this is okay, par for the course, just normal activity. Come on now. I want to hear from you guys, man. What are your thoughts on all of this? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on to all so you never miss an upload. Consider joining the ARP family or buy your brother a coffee. That link's in the description box below. Appreciate you guys, man. And as always, keep God first, stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you all next time. Peace.
Vibes so raw, can't hide the